Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion, and I'm Bill Stone. While I have your attention, I'd like to ask that if you like what I'm doing, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, share me on social media, and to tell all of your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock to do the same. I would appreciate your support via my PayPal tip jar, my Subscribe Star, my merch stores on Teespring, or a place on my website where you can support me further. And there are links to all of these in my description box. Well, hello for this special Tales from SYL Ranch live. So while I wait for maybe a few more viewers to come in, hey Debbie, how's it going? How's life treating you this evening? I will probably go ahead and sort of explain what I do, especially on these live streams, while I kind of wait for some people to come in. Looks like I got 4. Woohoo! Getting up there. What I do with this show is I do science fiction, superhero, fantasy, and horror TV and film reviews. Sometimes I do them live, as I'm doing tonight with Star Trek Picard, and sometimes I make pre-recorded videos. Now, my pre-recorded videos are what I call short-form reviews, and they tend to be about 20 minutes long. Moop de Fruple, hi Marshall, and hey Jay Haley, how's life treating you? But when I do my live reviews, such as the one I'm doing here, I consider them long-form reviews, and they can run 2 or 3 hours depending on how my viewers may jump in and want to say something. Sometimes I do serious films and TV, sometimes I do schlock, and sometimes I do reviews of modern films or TV with a broad appeal, like Star Wars, Marvel, DC, The Orville, Doctor Who, lately Batwoman. I do a lot of films also that are classic films, and by that I just mean that they're made anywhere between 1900 and about 1980. The period after 1980 is pretty well documented, but the period from 1900 to 1980 isn't well documented. But there's a lot of science fiction and a lot of science fiction fandom that happened during that period, and so it's not documented, so part of the reason I do the show is to document it. All hail genre. Not sure what that is, but okay. Mystic Wizard genre. Okay. Not sure where you're coming from, but all right. Tonight, this is obviously not a classic review, though it kind of borders on it because it is about Star Trek. I will take any and all questions, comments, and nasty remarks. I'll try to respond to as many of my viewers as possible. As I'm a small creator, I generally don't tend to have a ton of viewers at any given time, so I'll respond to just about everybody. You can tell me if I miss something, if I'm full of crap, or if I just happen to be an amazingly hoopy fruit. Oh, genre, I see. genre, yes. Stuff, what we call in genre. That's what I review. I do go into far more depth than any other reviewer. I don't just say if I like a film or not. I go into the acting, the direction, the cinematography, the mechanics of making a film, and I can do this with some authority because a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor, and I can speak with a modicum of authority. Not as much as a modern real working actor, but with some authority. There is an old saying that those who can do and those who can't teach. And I guess reviews are sort of like teaching. One thing I do not do is review for outrage. I know that there are many, many reviewers who are simply portraying outrage for the views because outrage tends to sell. But that's not me. If I think something is good, I'll say why I think it's good. If I think it's bad, I'll say why I think it's bad. I will not be outraged just for the views. I am the adult in the room. Checking over in my chat here. Marshall said, yes, saw it earlier this morning. Yeah, oh man, for me, that was a weird experience. I happened to be awake at about 2 a.m., maybe 2:30 or something like that, and I saw somebody on YouTube was doing a live stream review, and I went, what? Wait, whoa, when does this thing drop? Went out and looked, and there it was. So I watched it a couple of times, didn't get a hell of a lot of sleep. I'm going to get some tonight. And then spent several hours writing up my remarks on this review that I'll do interactively with my viewers. Jay says, much better than Encounter at Farpoint. Yes, I agree. Long shot based on the creators. You just finished it 15 minutes ago, Jay? Yeah. Stewart nailed Picard. Oh, writing was really good. Yeah, I can't. SYL Ranch in the Vineyard. Well, this is, in fact, the exact vineyard where Chateau Picard is supposed to be. This was the vineyard that they used, and I will talk about where that comes from. But, yeah, I researched around just so that I could get this exact vineyard and building where they shot that when on location. What soap is it that I'm using? I'm not sure what you mean by soap. I did just have a shower, but usually I just use my shampoo as my soap, to be perfectly honest. Hey, Larry, how's it going? And yeah, so I guess as a non-spoiler review, I can say that this was a good first episode. I am cautiously optimistic. I am not going to fanboy over it, but that's just for two reasons. The first one is that I have been burned by every Star Trek since 2009. It's either been generic action schlock or just stupid soap opera. And secondly, it's because it's predictable. You see, I am a Fandi master, as many of my people in my viewers are. And Fandi masters are all cursed. Fandi masters have watched, read, or listened to over 100 years' worth of science fiction. And the curse of the Fandi master is that you simply can't see anything that's the new stuff without seeing the century that came before, and it all tends to become predictable. You just find out there isn't much that's new in the world. In the case of Star Trek, it tends to be particularly bad in terms of that. In fact, I'm pretty much sure that I know where this story is going and won't spoil it by telling you, unless some preponderance of my viewers want me to, and even then I may not. Let's see, they did bend over backwards to add swashbuckling to Discovery for season 2. Yeah, well, it still didn't help in my opinion. That's a whole other subject. I will touch on Star Trek Discovery here a little bit. Remembrance, however, is a good beginning to a story that I can kind of see coming. It succeeds everywhere that Star Trek Discovery fails, and the reason is pretty simple. When did Discovery get Vipers? Yeah, when did the Enterprise suddenly have this gigantic fleet of shuttlecraft fighters or something? Who the hell knows? Dark Star Trek is not Star Trek. I agree. Yeah, enjoyed Pike and the Big E. Yeah, I did enjoy those guys. It's just that I get that you cannot do 1960s era production values and keep viewers. You have to update it. But for someone like me who is a purist, while I like seeing Pike, while I like seeing the Enterprise, I just, it wasn't the same. It's not my Enterprise. You want that, go to Star Trek Continues. That was amazing. I always say, either in chat or to his face or in email, because I've been talking to him from time to time, Vig Mignogna gave me my Star Trek for the very last time. Marshall says, as did I, but it was very manipulative and obvious play to critical fans. Yeah, a good showrunner could have made it work within its internal inconsistencies, or internal consistency. Yeah. So the reason that Discovery fails, and this doesn't fail, is because in 1988, Star Trek The Next Generation was a show made for fans of Star Trek the original series. Next Gen took a lot of pains to be respectful to the original series. It was largely made by fans, and so was crafted very, very lovingly. Today, Star Trek Picard is a show made for fans of Star Trek The Next Generation, that next generation of human beings, in fact. Now, if Remembrance is an indication, then they are taking great pains to be respectful to Star Trek The Next Generation. And I suspect that it is, to some extent, made by some fans, and at least this episode is made pretty lovingly. Star Trek Discovery is made by people who don't care about the original series at all. They think it's stupid and cheesy. They probably never even watched an episode of the original series. So aside from stealing ideas, like next season, they are stealing from another Gene Roddenberry property called Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda. Well, the thing just doesn't fit in with any other part of the franchise, and that's why it kind of fails. Viewers are saying, in the case of Picard, the Federation and Starfleet wandered into the dark, and they need Picard to put a beacon to get back on the right path. I certainly hope that's true, yeah. Roddenberry was alive in 1987. Yeah, exactly. He controlled the message. And by the way, I have a video that is linked to below. That is Gene Roddenberry from a 1976 record album called Inside Star Trek, where he talks about the Star Trek philosophy. And that's something that anyone should listen to, any Star Trek fan should listen to. But certainly people making Star Trek, modern Star Trek, should also listen to. Conflicted. That was Kirk being tempted when Spock looked at him and he backed off. Yeah. Understand Starfleet's decision to back off a bit. Marshall says, after all, Kirk wanted to let the Klingons die. It's obviously unheard of within Starfleet. I'm actually going to talk about that and probably why they did it as part of this review. So, Sir Patrick Stewart, of course, falls back into the Picard character effortlessly. This shouldn't come as any surprise. In my opinion, one of the hallmarks of a really good actor is that they can take clunky dialogue and make it work. And boy, was there a lot of clunky dialogue in the first 2 seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Sir Patrick was always able to make it work, sometimes while those around him struggled a bit. And I think Sir Patrick probably deserved his knighthood based on that dialogue alone. So that is the non-spoiler review. It was fun and exciting. It started a story arc for the season, and I'm cautiously optimistic, while at the same time suffering from the curse of the Fandi Masters. So that being said, beyond this, it's all going to be spoiler, so I'll issue myself a...
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and that is because I am a Fandi master, and that means that the fandom is strong with me, and that means that nothing is new, nothing is original, and at worst I figure it out about a half an hour too early. The Fandi master's curse. This is not a boast nor a brag. This is sadly where you find yourself after having watched, read, and listened to over 100 years worth of science fiction. You simply can't see the new stuff for the whole century that came before. You discover there's not much that's new in the world, and it sometimes interferes with your ability to enjoy things. Jay says, we've had this discussion before. Star Trek's primary question is, how should I be a good person? What does it mean to be a good person? So Star Trek is at its best when it throws a character into a dilemma and asks, what's the right thing to do? Especially when the answer may not be clear. Yeah, totally agree with you. It's one of the reasons this kind of works, although in a way that, I'm not sure Picard would have done necessarily. But again, I'm going to get into that in a minute. There's a lot of fan service in this episode. I mean, it starts right off with Blue Skies, which is from Star Trek Nemesis, when Data was singing it at Riker and Troy's wedding. In order for that situation to be crap, must look dark and conflicted. Yeah, but there's a difference between having that conflicting thing and actually having a dark, dark aesthetic. I don't think a dark, dark aesthetic is the right thing for Star Trek. Stewart's in his 80s. How long can he go? Yeah, that's definitely a question. Making a TV series is just fantastically draining physically. The hours that you have to put in are just awful. I think that's why it's only 10 episodes long, because, there's only so much you can do. And how long he does this, I know they've got a second season signed up. They just got Whoopi Goldberg signed up. I'm not actually happy about that. I'm at a point where I really don't like to see Whoopi Goldberg because she's on that stupid show, The View, which is just nothing but a bunch of harpies whining on, and I can't stand that show. Anyway, more fan service. The appearance of the Enterprise D, of course, 10 Forward and Poker, and Picard telling Data that he's learned his tell. It says Picard in this episode is where Kirk was in Star Trek II. He has a display in his own museum that includes inciting incident, reminds him of that he is not a museum piece, but a man of action. Yes, I agree. Yes, and it was very pretty. Absolutely, it was. One of the things they've never really gotten right is the scale of the Enterprise D. That thing is actually an enormous ship, and with models they could never do it. They don't even really get the scale here, but they do sort of, because they zoom in from outside of space into 10 Forward. But again, you never really get a scale. That is an enormous ship, just gigantic, and you never really get the scale from it. Never have. So other things that were kind of fan service, the greater Boston area had a building with the Ferengi logo on it, as well as a building with FNN on it, the Federation News Network that ties in later. That's not exactly a fan service, but a Boston, it's another one that's not a fan service exactly, is in Boston. There is a Boston Kings sign at the bottom of one of those buildings. And I didn't know what it is, but Boston King is a well-known venue in Boston right now. A little bit of a subtle product placement, perhaps. Who knows? Let's see. It covers the size of your hometown, Spokane. Yeah, it's a huge, huge ship. They can get it right, but if they do it right, the windows would be almost unseeable. Yeah, absolutely. Star Trek Experience was supposed to be a full-scale Enterprise. I went to the Star Trek Experience back in the early 1990s. The thing that I remember about it most, and they didn't have a full-scale Enterprise, but the thing I remember about it most was when they beamed us up to the ship. We're all standing there in what looks like a normal situation. The lights go dark for only a short period of time. There's some wind only for a short period of time. The lights come up and suddenly you're in the full-scale, four-walled version of the Enterprise transporter room. It was something when I first happened, it actually took me back, and I was like, how did they do that? I did. To this day, I do not know how they did that. It was an excellent, excellent effect. Let's see. Jay says, I like the 24th century Boston. It looked real, yes. The sets were all real. They had to be. I like a place you could actually go. Yes, I'm going to talk about that too. The location shooting and this stuff behind me, for example. Other little thing that I very much liked as a fan service were the Romulan foreheads. Now, Laris, one of Picard's servants apparently, had no appliance, which was very much similar to non-Next Generation era Romulans. Zhaban, the other guy, had a TNG era appliance. It was much smaller than what you saw in TNG-1. TNG was gigantic. But as with Star Trek 2009, it does help establish that there are more than one variant of the Romulans, and that is a good thing because the original series Romulans depended as plot points on looking like Vulcans. And so having the TNG era ones like the TOS era Klingons just don't match. So this has established a different foreheads, and I think that's a good match. You were there at the opening. Oh, that's cool. I wasn't there at the opening. It was much later, but I still thought that was a really cool effect. I'm not going to spoil it for the audience. Cool. Yeah. I still don't know how they do it. I thought it was very, very cool. Let me take off my spoiler alert card. Let's see. No Klingons in sight. Yeah, no Klingons in this one. I don't know if we'll maybe see Worf at some point later. Who knows? Another good fan service, Bruce Maddox. We saw him in The Next Generation when he tried to have Data declared property, and then working with Data, more or less off-screen, to reproduce Dr. Sung's work that led to Data. I wonder, however, if they're going to eventually bring him out as some kind of mastermind behind these synths that kind of went nuts, and the ones that we've got in the show right now. Excuse me. Another interesting small bit of fan service, the thing that they used to heal Dodge's forehead is extremely similar to a prop used way back in the original series to do the same thing. The index, that was the archive, being an intelligent hologram, though probably not as intelligent as the Doctor from Voyager, but it was an interesting callback to another series. However, the problem is that it's almost a cringe moment because Voyager had a major subplot involving intelligent holograms being used as slaves. And it seems like things maybe either haven't gotten any better for them or maybe they're not intentionally not allowing holograms to achieve sentience. Yes, you like my spoiler alert? Thank you. I worked on that a bit to make it visible. And protoplaser. Yes, that's what they called it, the protoplaser. Anabolic protoplaser, but it was a very similar prop. Smaller, different shape, different slightly, but it was very similar to that, and I'm sure that was a callback. Captain Picard Day. Interestingly enough, I had watched the episode in which that banner appeared less than 24 hours before this show did. For kicks, I started watching some Next Gen, and I happened to catch that. Thought that was cute that they put it in there. Starfleet and Star Trek itself have problems dealing with the idea of AI. Yes, they do. They have never dealt with it in a way that I thought was actually realistic. Yep, Captain Picard Banner Day. I like that too. The Borg Cube under construction. Well, it also might qualify as kind of a cringe moment. It is the reason that the curse of the Fandi Master kicks in. When I saw it in the trailer, I was actually pretty sure where this was headed. For those of you who are not under the curse of the Fandi Master, this is a show that's going to be about Data, Maddox, Data's legacy, and some really pissed off Romulans, I think. They say they're part of the recovery project. Yeah, they're making a Borg cube as a recovery project. Yeah, that ought to be fun. Yep, Borg cube is problematic. Oh, I'm sure it's a major part of this story and going forward. Other interesting things about this. Chateau Picard was largely tended by robots, which I thought was great. I'm actually unclear why any humans would be necessary. Robots ought to be more than capable of doing the job, and we did see some humans in there. It's nice to know that journalists are the same slimy little weasels that they are today. They will agree to one thing and then renege when you're live just for the ratings. And as always, scrolls past in my lower third and is oftentimes my secondary motto of my show. Nothing you see in the press is real, nothing. And yeah, that's included here. Star Trek Online, there are subplots about the Romulans trying to reverse engineer Borg technology. Yeah, well, the explanation that's always been given as to why the technology seen in the Star Trek 2009 and on movies is because they were able to study that some of the technology that came from Nero's ship and stuff were based on Borg technology. They were able to study it and adapt it and make their own technology better. That's always what they've said. Supercrew 63 watched it and found the episode enjoyable. Yes, I did too. There are humans in the field, but no information about who they were. Yeah, apparently this is saying staying true to even for fictional press. Yeah, I agree. The Narada, yeah, Nero's spooky ship, weird-looking spooky ship, yes. Another interesting thing, the mention of Dunkirk. Now, Star Trek is always best when it's smart, and the inclusion of a real World War II battle, of which most modern viewers are almost certainly ignorant, was being smart, and that was good. Let's see. Picard, really being an old man waiting to die came off really good that way, and his transition to being a man with a purpose was great. As always, great performance by Sir Patrick. I do have my cringe moments. Marshall says Dunkirk's reference actually moved me a bit, as the seriousness of it, a good reference. Yeah, a good reference in Star Trek is always good when it's smart, and they made that smart, which I thought was good. But my cringe moments, Starfleet abandoning the Romulans. So, okay, all right, maybe synthetic life forms basically destroyed Mars. Okay, so maybe most of the fleet they were assembling were destroyed at Utopia Planitia on Mars. Okay, so maybe Starfleet just said, frack you Romulans, you can go and die for all we care. Now, this is a federation composed of 1,000 planets, which was said by Kirk back in Metamorphosis in 1967. You don't require a government to get involved for this rescue mission. 2 words, Cajun Navy. Now, if you don't know, the Cajun Navy is an all-volunteer group that assists during natural disasters, generally hurricanes or floods along the Gulf Coast of the United States. It consists of anyone with a boat or other vehicles and who wants and has tools that would be useful in a natural disaster. And while they do coordinate with government and authorities, they operate totally independently. In fact, even their command and control center is operated by total volunteers. And sometimes it's volunteers who just happen to find themselves in this channel where they're doing things and doing, telling people where to go and what to do. And they just go, what, I'm the only one here? Well, I guess I better get out a map and do it. It's really great. Jay says, the journalist was intent on differentiating Romulan lives from other people, and Picard pushed back. Yes, he did. Marshall says, I don't think that the Federation would concentrate all its ships around one planet either. Yeah, that kind of dumb. But in any case, in a Federation of 1,000 worlds, there will be millions, maybe tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people who own spacecraft of their own, private spacecraft. Even if one of Starfleet's main spacecraft producing facilities was destroyed, there would be millions upon millions of regular Joes who'd happily spend the next year or so ferrying Romulan refugees around. This is, and I pop into a little bit of politics here, symptomatic of the growing want of socialism and communism in the U.S. Everyone has begun to expect that the government must do everything, and if government can't do it, then it won't get done. And that's nonsense, as the Cajun Navy's pure existence proves. If the Romulan Empire were essentially destroyed, it's absolutely certain that independent, non-government, free individuals would use their personally owned spacecraft to help out. Don't depend on government for everything. It's not your only option. If you think it is, look to the Cajun Navy, and look to history, and the modern day for that matter, so that you can see how these things do work. Government doesn't and can't do anything and everything for you. Let's see. I see a freighter captain saying, screw it, jettison cargo, set course for Romulus and alert Starfleet. Hell, freighter captain, there's probably profit in it. You know, well, depending on what he's carrying, maybe he's got perishable goods, food, water. Might be worth something that he could, sell or something. But yes, under these circumstances, maybe they just say, hey, jettison the cargo. Let's go and pick these guys up. There have got to be 1,000 worlds. There have got to be a lot of spacecraft that could be used for this. And most of them, well, not most of them, but a lot of them would be a lot closer to what I guess would previously have been the Romulan neutral zone. So yeah, private individuals would do this. It's doing something important. You can't concentrate it all in one system without utterly failing to do what you built it to do to begin with. Still, if I were a Starfleet captain, I would leave any routine mission and to get me some Romulans. Absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to use just these ships. Starfleet has ships like everywhere. All you do is, head for Romulus, guys. Surely they can court-martial me later. Yeah, after you've saved all these people. If they're going to dump you out because of that, if they're going to cashier you for that, you can still walk away saying, I know that I did the right thing. Now, there is, I think, an attempt at a Romulan allegory that is a social justice warrior fail. You've been making up Star Trek people since 1983. Yeah. Not independent trader, not in the military. Sure. Yeah. Anybody who wants. 1,000 planets, lots of spaceships. There's got to be people who will come and help under those circumstances. A lot of them. But there is what I think is a social justice warrior fail here. Because Sir Patrick has said in interviews that Picard is his response to Trump, Brexit, nationalism, and because he believes we live in dark times. I find that surprising coming out of a man his age. He should know damn well that there have been far darker times within his own lifetime. SJW fail incoming. Yes. Unfortunately, it's clear that he neither understands Brexit nor any of the rest of the current geopolitical situation. Now, I have to assume that the situation with the Romulans is supposed to be an allegory for the illegal aliens coming across the U.S.'s southern border. And again, Sir Patrick simply doesn't understand the situation. It's not that the U.S. is abandoning anyone. It's not that the U.S. is putting people in horrible living conditions for fun. It's that the sheer number of people combined with no fiscal release by Congress makes the situation impossible. And the situation is, in fact, beginning to stabilize simply because Mexico is no longer allowing large numbers of people to cross their territory. They are inspired by a desire to keep their free trade agreement with the U.S. So Mexico is now interdicting large numbers of people attempting to cross into their territory. Essentially, whether you like it or not, Mexico itself has become the wall that Trump often spoke of. Now, none of this is even remotely what Sir Patrick believes it to be. Unfortunately, this allegory is diluted by being a very different situation than what Sir Patrick thinks it is. He may believe that the U.S. is being mean and ugly and horrible and all kinds of evil things, but his allegory with the Romulans is rather at odds with real life, so it fails completely. Just as the Klingons, being Trump supporters in STD, fell flat because it was not a mirror to reality, the Romulan allegory falls flat for the exact same reason. So I'm sorry, Sir Patrick, your SJW wokeness failed because you may know about the Battle of Dunkirk, but you know nothing about the real geopolitics currently at play. Let's see. Analogy with Syria. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. So the left-wing idea that the U.S. Should continue engagement with the Middle East. They are. They actually are. It's just not maybe the engagement the left would like to see. As long as they keep it to allegory, it's a valid topic to address. Yeah, it's an allegory that isn't quite there because it fails. Other cringe moments. The reporter said that in the Mars thing, that 93,143 lives were lost. Okay, it has been long established that, even since the original series, that Mars has been inhabited for a very long time. And we see in this episode, out the Enterprise, the 10 Forward's windows, that the buildings themselves, a lot of the buildings on Mars, are structures that are visible from orbit. If the atmosphere were suddenly torched and the planet's on fire for the next 20 years, to this day, the losses would have been in the hundreds of millions and perhaps even more. Mars is a heavily populated planet in Star Trek lore. Jay Haley says you start with an allegory and then you role-play it honestly for itself and your game world, which is what they do, and I don't have any problem with that. And the munitions were huge. Yeah, exactly. It's anytime you get to a planet killer level threat, you start to get into a weird area because it's really hard to kill a planet. I guess the way that they did it makes some level of sense in the context of the show, but killing a planet's actually really hard. And again, this is something where we have known for decades that Mars is a heavily populated planet. They came up with their own sort of constitution, the Fundamental Declaration of the Martian Colonies. Clearly, they've been around a long time. Marshall says, and you don't need to destroy a building, just breach it, let lack of atmosphere handle it. Yeah, on Mars, absolutely. Yeah, just, throw micrometeorites at all their domes until everybody dies, yeah. And how do you burn a thin atmosphere? Yeah, well, I think their understanding of the Martian atmosphere is a bit wonky. They didn't do their science right on that. Martian atmosphere, as far as I know, doesn't have any flammable contents in the upper atmosphere, was what they blamed this on. Could have been done just by, as Marshall says, puncturing everything in sight and letting everybody die. That would have been working. Then there's Picard saying, because it was no longer Starfleet. This is the one thing that I thought was just weird with Picard as a character, because we saw him here quit in disgust, but I think that's a little out of character. I think he'd have moved heaven and earth, even if it meant trying to get himself promoted all the way up to Starfleet Commander, just to oversee getting it done. Quitting makes for a nice bit of Picard getting his mojo back at the end of the episode, but it didn't feel quite right. It was out of character. To me, this is a guy who, if Starfleet started doing stuff like this, he would start making noise. It just wouldn't have been a bystander. He'd been somebody who would have tried, It was no longer Starfleet's personal honor thing. Yeah, but again, it just doesn't seem like, I think he would have taken his personal honor and gone upwards with it. He expended all his political capital getting the refugee rescue going to begin with. Maybe that was part of it. I don't know. To me, it just seemed like, as Picard as a character we knew him would just be outraged and take it upward, kill himself until finally he just couldn't do it anymore. I don't know. But in any case, it does make for a good, like Jay says, kind of like Kirk in Star Trek II, thinks he's, outdated and old and just waiting around to die, and then, oh, okay, I've got my mojo back, which was kind of cool. Once it was ruined, Starfleet and the Federation just went meh. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's certainly not Starfleet we know. Another interesting thing, another cringe thing, Dodge, when she shows up and talks about having killed everybody, she says, I woke up and there was just so much blood. No, there wasn't. We saw the thing. She shot most of these guys with energy weapons. We didn't see anything like any blood. There was no blood coming out of the, where the knife was sticking out of her boyfriend's chest. No blood there. The most blood that we actually saw was from the, wound in her head, but it didn't even really bleeding badly. Typically, by the way, when you, do something with her forehead, it bleeds a lot, but it isn't real bad injury. It's what professional wrestlers used to do if they wanted to have blood. They'd keep a razor and just run it across their forehead, and it would look like they're suddenly bleeding like mad when in fact, there wasn't really a bad injury. It's just a cut of the forehead. There was too much bacon. Okay, calling the dog number 1. I get what they were going for, but did they need to name the dog number 1? It seemed a little bit of a stretch to me. It's a fan service, but still a little much stress. Yes, there was so much kayfabe, but that's what they called it back in the days of professional wrestling, when the wrestlers pretended that the match outcomes weren't predetermined, that they weren't, doing moves that they had themselves come up with for this match. But again, what they do is they blade themselves. They would just, not even the person who was fighting them would do it. They would do it themselves sometime during it. Guy would hit them in the face, they'd blade themselves, and then they'd start bleeding like mad, but really it was just a small cut across the forehead. If you look at some of those old wrestlers from way back when, and they're old now, you'll notice that they just have scar tissue everywhere on their forehead from the number of times that they bladed themselves. Marshall liked that bit with the number 1. Yeah, I get that one's just a, a personal thing. I was like, oh, come on, man. His second in command used to be number 1. Okay. Tea, Earl Grey, decaf. I think that was a bit more of SJW neo-puritanism. It was always tea, Earl Grey, hot. Adding decaf just seemed really Puritan, like SJWs are. It's weird. SJWs, the people on the left, have become the new Puritans. What they've always accused Republicans of doing, they have themselves become. Transporters. Now, this isn't exactly a cringe. It's just something that's always bothered me about Star Trek, and it seems rather glaring in Picard. Given that transporters are so ubiquitous that you can beam in and out all over Boston and Starfleet headquarters, why are there any other forms of transportation? Flying cars, flying anything should be totally unnecessary with ubiquitous teleportation. I mean, flying cars make for a really neat-looking futuristic world, but the ubiquitous teleportation, they just would be irrelevant. For that matter, so would cities themselves. One could choose to live in a small cabin in South Dakota, but still work at Starfleet headquarters by virtue of just transporting there, using a transporter. The cities ought to be, frankly, largely depopulated with very few tall buildings and kind of more like small towns than anything else. And for that matter, even Starfleet headquarters makes little sense. You could not necessarily centralize it. You could have offices all over the world, and people would be connected by the transporter. And the sole exception for this might be something like Starfleet Academy. But again, in general usage, it should be more, frankly, like we saw in Yorktown in Star Trek Beyond, where they're using teleportation all over the place. That makes perfect sense. There's nothing that should be carried by anything like a flying car or flying truck or anything. Teleportation is ubiquitous. They wouldn't need it. Let's see. Decaf easy. I'd watch as he leaps into action. He will drink real caffeine. Jay Haley says they're expensive like helicopters. They don't seem to be. People are using them all over the place. You can use them, but it takes a lot of energy. Yeah, but again, if you look at, it seems ubiquitous. It doesn't seem like they're treating it that way. It seems like they're treating it ubiquitous. Maybe padless teleports are highly frowned upon. Perhaps the overuse of transporters, maybe. Or energy requirements, like Jay says. Jay says the fact that the Romulan guys can beam in and around means either they've broken security or they're in league with Starfleet security, very possibly, yes. Or maybe it's just not going to be explained. We don't know. But that's something that's always kind of bothered me about Star Trek, just in general, ever from the beginning. I was like, if you can do ubiquitous teleportation, why do you need anything else? So, one of the other things I found as a cringe moment was that necklace. I got the impression really that half the reason that these synths must be made as twos is a plot device so that Picard can find the other one, because she's got the other half of the BFF locket, So I didn't think that was all that great. Let's see. What's the range of that year's transporter? We don't know. Obviously, we don't know. It may be a question of that, too. It may be a question of how far you're going. I don't know. Again, Larry Niven, for example, he did a really good version of this when he did introduce teleportation into his known space universe. And basically, all other forms of transportation just disappeared. On your front door, you had a teleporter, and it was locked away so that people couldn't get in. And, there were other means so that people could just, beam into the into a bank and steal all the money. But when that happened, all other forms of transportation just disappeared. They became unnecessary. Flick booths. Yes, that's what Larry Niven did on that. Yeah, exactly. But in any case, just one of those things that's always bothered me. Kind of sticks out in this episode because of the number of times they use the transporter. But there may be, you can come up with technical reasons why maybe it isn't something they get, Friend asked, how do they get their groceries home? Beam them home. I don't know. Now, some of the production notes. Now, I always start off my reviews sort of in reverse order. And that's because, as a former actor, I know that the people in front of the camera are the ones who get all of the glory. However, it's the ones who are behind the camera that usually deserve the lion's share of it. And that's not to take anything away from the actors, but the fact is that they are the last component of production. They arrive for work after everything else has been planned and prepared. So I usually start backwards and work with these with the writer to start with. Genre thing sets mood. Yeah. So I start with the writer. I always begin my reviews with the writer because the script is where everything begins. If you don't have a script, then you have nothing to shoot. The fault, good or bad, for anything dramatic always begins and ends with the writer. The writer on this is James Duff. The episode shows a lot of writers, but when you boil it down on IMDb, it really devolves to him. He gets it created by, he gets a story and screenplay by. So he's really the guy who wrote this episode. Jerry Ryan still looks good. Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing Jerry Ryan very much. I doubt she'll be in that freaking cat suit, but that was one of those things. Putting cat suits on anyone in any show was dumb. Should have just given her a uniform, same as T'Pol, regular uniform, and not stuck them in those skin-tight cat suits for the benefit of viewers. One of my uncles always said, there's really only two reasons that I watch Star Trek Voyager. And he would end it right there, and we'd all figure out what two reasons he was thinking about. So, James Duff's credits. I always go through the credits, like to establish whether they've been doing any work for any length of time, whether it's been any good. He has been active as a writer from 1992 to present. He has 16 writer credits, and always remember when I talk about how many credits they have, if they're doing TV shows, that may break down to one credit for a TV show may break down to 15 episodes or more. So he does have one Star Trek Enterprise, believe it or not, that's called Fortunate Son. He's also got 9 producer credits. He's got producer credits on all 10 episodes of Star Trek Picard. And he's got, because I only refer to Star Trek Discovery because I dislike it, and when it comes back, I'll be doing reviews of it. Just ripping off another Roddenberry property. When it comes back, I'll be redoing of it, but I can only think of it as STD. Sorry, guys. If you want me to think of it as something else, come up with a better one. So all I'm going to say is that James Duff has 8 STDs. He was producer on 8 episodes of Star Trek Discovery, and he has 2 director credits. Puritans won't let it happen, Larry says. Yes. And you like that one. I don't remember the episode, honestly. I don't remember. But I'd probably look it up and watch it. What I always do is the day of review, I spend a whole bunch of time doing this research. And I was about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before the show. I think it was 3, close to 3, 2.5, 3. before the show was going to come up tonight, and by that time my brain is a little bit fried, and I go off someplace to relax until the show is ready. First or second season, though, I do not know when that episode in Star Trek Enterprise appeared. I have no idea. He has won awards. He has won the Women's Image Network Award in 2006 for Outstanding Drama Series for The Closer, and he has 2 other nominations. His writing here, I think, is great. I think he does a very good job with the writing. I think it is setting things up. It is not, as happens with Star Trek Discovery, especially their last episode, it is not suddenly pulling the brakes to do any kind of stupid soap opera drama. That's one of the things that I hope having an older main character will do. That main character cannot stop to have relationship drama with people that are so much younger than he is. I hope very much that we're going to see adult relationships, stuff that maybe I can relate to, and not be doing action where we pull the brakes. No STD episodes first season, Drek, or second season, much less Drek. First season I hated for a number of reasons, mostly because the whole thing was unnecessary. The Klingons said they didn't want to be part of the Federation. Federation usually, when that happens, they say, okay, see you later. Let us know if you want to change anything. So the entire season was unnecessary. If they'd just done what the Federation has always done, the ship would have been off and done, and there would have been no war. The second season was better, except that I knew that the predestination paradox was going to come. I knew all along that it was Burnham. It's the curse of the Fandi Master. And I know, as again, I'm a purist. I do not like, I understand why they had to do it, but I don't like that this does not fit anywhere. Stuff that happens in Discovery nullifies some of the things that happen in the original series. Just outright nullifies them. It can't happen the way that it happened in the series because of what they did in Discovery. Oh, no. The writer, did he do first or second STD? I don't know. I don't remember the answer to that. I didn't look that hard. I want to get through these relatively quickly, so I didn't look to see what episodes he'd done. I don't know the answer. But again, the writing is good. It sets things up. It's fairly adult. It's smart. It doesn't put the brakes on. It flows very nicely. It's got that 4-act structure that I've talked about many times, and it just works very well. It is a well-written script and a very good introduction. It's not like Jay said, Encounter at Farpoint, which is a Gene Roddenberry script, which means it was just preachy and the characters didn't necessarily behave normally in context. They were, hi, I'm this character, this is what I'm going to do on this show. This was much more smart in the way that it introduced some of the main characters. We're going to get more of them as we go along. So I think he did a very good job. Very good script, and part of the reason that I enjoyed the show. Our director is Hanel L. Culpepper. She has been active since 1993 to present, although she had a large gap between 1996 and 2002. She has 43 director credits. She's got 2 STDs, 1 Supergirl, 3 of The Flash, 2 of the Gotham, and that's just, the stuff that's in genre. I don't list out everything, because especially with her, you can get 26 episodes of some series that's not related to science fiction or anything. So I just do the genre stuff. She also has 6 producer credits. She is co-executive producer of this episode on Picard. She also has 5 writer credits, 4 miscellaneous crew, 1 cinematographer, and 1 soundtrack. She has also won awards. She won the Sacramento Gaffers Award in 2004 for Outstanding Director for a Short for A Single Rose. She also won the NAACP Image Awards in 2015 for Outstanding Directing in a Drama Series for 2 series, Criminal Minds and The Edge of Winter. Her direction is quite good. I don't know, what you always want in something like a TV show or a movie, especially this one, where the aspect ratio they've given it on it is actually a widescreen aspect ratio. I'm wondering if maybe they aren't intending to release this in theaters at some point, like they've done with Doctor Who. I don't know, maybe. But they're giving it a wide aspect ratio that's more similar to what you'd find on a screen. Marshall says, one wonders if you press the red alert button instead of the jettison pod. Is it that's still active? I'm sorry, let me take... Did I leave that in there on all of them? Well, I think they're in on all of them. I know what happened. I set these cards up and you can do a duplicate on them. Well, whatever. We all know it's a spoiler at this point. I can't take it out, unfortunately, very easily. Because I did it, I think, on all of these cards. My very last one, when I exit out, it won't be on it. So we're all in spoiler territory here anyway, so what the hell. Is it giving out the red alert signal whenever I start the damn thing up? I bet it is. God, and I can't change it. Maybe I can mute that so that it never comes back. I'll check on the next card. Just fired when the director queued up. Okay, maybe I have, maybe I copied the wrong cards, and I'll see if maybe muting this where I've got it will cause it to mute the next time around. So we'll see. So the direction here is very good. What you really want to have, what you like to have for any given thing, is a sort of a collaboration between the director and the cinematographer. Director says, I want this shot. The cinematographer figures out how to get it. Sometimes they talk together and say, hey, you want this shot, cinematographer says, but I can make it a little bit better for you. And I don't know if that's happening here, but whatever was going on worked really well. The direction isn't something that anybody's going to win any awards over, but the way it was done, sometimes they did low-angle shots, like from the perspective of number one dog, for example. Sometimes they did higher ones. I thought that the fight scenes weren't too over-choreographed. That happens a lot with fight scenes, so it was good. It was very good. There was mood lighting where it should have been. Again, that's sort of cinematographer's job, but still, it all worked very well. I thought her direction was very good. Again, nothing that's going to win any awards, but it was good. A direction was pretty damn evocative. Unusual angles. Yes, they did have some of that. They did do some of that. I can't point to any specific moment. I remember very clearly a lot of the stuff that happened here on the Vineyard. And I remember a lot of the stuff that happened at Starfleet Command, and I thought all of it was very good, very well directed. The cinematographer, let's see if I had copied the wrong one. No, I didn't. Okay, cinematographer is Philip Lanyon. He has been active from 2001 to present. He has 19 cinematographer credits. He is scheduled for 6 episodes of Picard. He has 1 STD and 1 short trek. He has a whole bunch. He has 8 camera and electrical department credits, which oftentimes just means instead of being the guy who figures out how to get the shot, he's the guy sitting at the camera actually filming it. And he has 1 editorial department credit. He has won an award, a Leo Award in 2006 for short drama, best cinematography for Hiro, Hiro, something Japanese or another. His cinematography, again, very good. Again, I don't know how much of this is a collaboration between the director and the cinematographer. You always hope that there is a good collaboration. I always look back to things like Superman, the movie. Definitely a very good collaboration between that cinematographer and that director. But whatever's going on here was good. There was a lot of good mood lighting that was setting things up. There were places... Lighting is something that it isn't something you definitely notice, but I notice it because it was always on point. There's no point in here where you say, oh man, that's just lit wrong. Now, it's lit very differently from what we see in, Star Trek The Next Generation. Star Trek The Next Generation was very flat lighting because they couldn't do a lot of stuff technologically that they could do now. It was flat, bright TV lighting. This lighting changes from scene to scene. It underscores what's going on in the scene, the emotional resonance of the scene, and at the same time, it's getting all the shots that the director wants, and what the director wanted was great. So it worked together really well. Production design, let's see which one I copied with this. Yeah, I copied the right one. Production design was by Todd Cherniowski, I believe is the name. Marcia said, well, we're on Earth for the first couple of episodes. Of course, the lighting will be different. Yeah, but I suspect that the lighting is going to be something that we see as different going throughout the series, simply because you couldn't do, in Next Gen what you can do now. The lighting and the cameras were all pretty static because they were big. Look at the camera that Philip's holding here, right? That's the cameras you deal with now. They're tiny. You can move them around. Some of them are even smaller than that. Used to be, the giant cameras, you wanted to move them, you put them on a dolly track, and you hope that the dolly track was solid so it didn't vibrate as you move the camera. They can just do more things now than you can ever possibly have imagined in 1988. The whole crew did a good technical job. I totally agree. And some of them are very, very experienced, as I'm going to talk about as I go along. So Todd Cherniowski, he's been active 1990 to present. He has 18 production designer credits. He's doing all of the production design for Picard. He has 4 STDs. He's got 24 art department credits. Let's see. Jay says, yes, we're further away from all good things than Encounter at Farpoint was. Yeah. Something I always have to remind myself, when people tell me that they can't stand to watch Star Trek, the original series. We are farther removed in time from Star Trek, the original series, than I was from the old Flash Gordon serials of the 1930s when I started watching them. We have moved that far beyond. Thank goodness we didn't have a gazillion lens flares. Yeah, but I think that's just a J.J. Abrams thing, and even he knows there were too many now. Yes, Turnabout Intruder, last episode of Star Trek, the original series. So Todd has 24 art department credits, most of which are set design. He did 1 STD, Terminator Genesis, Jurassic World, Transformers, Dark Side of the Moon, Superman Returns, War of the Worlds, that would be the crappy Tom Cruise version, and he was the assistant art director on that as well. The Polar Express, the Chronicles of Riddick, Hulk, the Ang Lee one, Planet of the Apes, the crappy Tim Burton one, and Inspector Gadget, the crappy Matthew Broderick one, and a whole lot of other stuff. He is one of the most experienced guys to be on this show. It was over 30 years ago. Yes, exactly. Jay says. Marshall says, to be fair, we haven't seen a lot of cinematic space scenes yet. The flares may yet invade. Maybe, I don't know. Again, I think that's just something that everyone went, oh, man, that's too many lens flares. At some point, and fairly recently, even J.J. Abrams had said, maybe I should have toned it down a little bit. But I don't know that we're necessarily going to get that. The ship that looks like they're going to be on, I suspect is going to be an older ship, and it's going to be a bit darker just because of that. So we shall see. But Todd here is one of the most experienced people to come around. He was also art director, 11 credits for that. He was the supervising art director for Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. He was on Transformers, The Last Night, and also for Avatar. So he's a very experienced guy coming in here. He's also got camera and electrical department for 4 credits and visual effects for 1. So he's a very, very experienced art director. I think so far we haven't necessarily seen a ton of art direction, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we're going to see more of that going forward. And what we did see was very good. He's won awards. He won the Art Directors Guild Award in 2014, the Excellence in Production Design Award for a commercial or PSA, promo, and music video for Call of Duty Ghosts. He won the 2010, the same Art Directors Guild Award for Excellence in Production Design Award for a fantasy film for Avatar. And he's won the Online Film and Television Association Award in 2010, Best Production Design for Avatar. And he's got 9 other nominations. His production design. Now, a lot of this episode was shot on location at real places, and you can never tell anymore where they've added the CGI. But interiors and exteriors, particularly of this, particularly, they didn't do much with. The Chateau Picard was the Sunstone Vineyards and Winery in Northern California. And I know this because I wanted this on my green screen. You can look at this. I've got a link to where they've got some pictures of that on their website. And you can see that the rooms and the decorations in the rooms and the way that the furniture is set up and all of that was changed very little from the way that Sunstone actually maintains it. They took advantage of what they had, which was very, very good. It was very, very good. Something, because they do things there. You can go and have special events at that villa that you see in my background, and they have basically hotel rooms there. So they were shooting inside of that building, and you can see the pictures again at that link below. And so they made good use of what they had, and I thought that was very good. I like location shooting a lot. I encourage it whenever possible. It's much better than having a sound stage and a green screen, I think. Let's see. Marshall says he's the Mike Okuda for Picard. Yes, he kind of is. Yeah, and he's also doing callbacks to the LCAR's computer interface. There are ways you can theme your Windows computer to look like LCAR's. I've tried it. It's actually a sucky interface in real life. But he is doing callbacks for that. This time they tend to be holographic to pop up, but they're definitely callbacks. They have some of the same sound effects. He's doing all of that. So, yes. Do you think he did a location shoot for it? Wait a second. Let's see. Supergroup 63 Avatar was good looking. I look forward to his second movie. I'm not sure whether I look forward to it or not, but yeah, it was a damn hellacious movie. It's amazing to think that actually came out in 2000. It's been 20 years, and they're still working on like 4 sequels. So, you think he did a location shoot for it? He did a lot of location shooting. He did it here, and he did it for when they went to the Daystrom Institute. That was a location shoot. Again, I don't know how much CGI they put in around it. It's impossible to tell. But there was some CGI that you saw on this villa, because you could see off in the distance very tall buildings that don't exist in that villa today. So, beyond that, Avatar was 2009. Oh, I'm sorry, 9 years ago. Yeah, you're right. I missed that 9 years ago. Still, that's kind of amazing to wait, 9 or 10 years for, sequels. Usually you'll get them a little sooner than that. You've been to Sunstone Vineyards. Oh, you have, Supercruise 63. It's about 25 miles away from my house. Well, now you can go there and take pictures just like you see in Chateau Picard, because that is where it was. That is where it was shot. I looked it up. There was, beyond some of the real locations, we had the Starfleet archives, futuristic depictions of living spaces, etc., and these were all very fine. You don't have that feel of the Enterprise D that was kind of like, people described it as being inside of a good hotel. You don't have that. But again, that's partly because we have different lighting and different ways to move the camera now that we couldn't do in the 1980s, 1990s. It just wasn't possible. One thing I couldn't help but notice, and it may just be because it look cool, but the Starfleet archives, I couldn't help be reminded of the Jedi archives that we saw in Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. It looked very, very similar in terms of the design aesthetic. As they're walking through the big corridor, and there's all these big giant things that look like they have some kind of computer thing. Looked a lot like the Jedi archives as well. So, all right, let's see if I copied the right one here. Yay, I did. The music in this was by Jeff Russo. His credits are 1996 to present. He has done almost exclusively television. He's got 63 composer credits, 1 filming, 1 in post, and is scoring all of Star Trek Picard, apparently, for Season 1. He has 40 Fargos, 5 short treks, but he's listed there mostly as the theme composer, but there may be other music he did. I have not watched the last series of short treks. Star Trek Discovery has pretty much lost me. I'm going to be doing reviews just because I'm going to be doing reviews, but I didn't care anymore. I just didn't care. Star Trek Discovery, I just don't care anymore. I'm going to be reviewing them because it's genre and because people are interested, but I just don't care anymore about Discovery. You've lost me. Jay says he did a good job kicked ass. Yeah, I agree. Let me finish with his various credits, because he's another one that's very well. Came to it with a lot of stuff. He did 27 episodes of Legion, 46 episodes of Lucifer, 29 episodes of STD. He was also the composer of the main theme. He has 27 music department credits, but almost all of these are for themes that he composed, opening title themes, and so he gets credited for all of those, even really he only did the work once. He's also got 11 soundtrack credits and 9 actor credits, among other things. He won the Primetime Emmy in 2017 for Outstanding Music, Composition for a Limited Series Movie or Special Original Dramatic Score. My God, these are the ones you don't see on the Emmy Awards shows. These are the ones they show otherwise, but he got that for Fargo. He won the ASCAP Film and Television Music Awards repeatedly. In 2014, he got Top TV Series for Fargo and Hostages. 2013, Top TV Series for Necessary Roughness. He won the Best Shorts competition in 2015 for Original Score for Talk to Me. He won the Online Film and Television Association Award in 2016 and 2014 for Best Music in a Non-Series for Fargo, and he has 11 other nominations. Clearly, a guy who has coming to this with quite a lot of experience behind his belt. The short trek Children of Mars is actually a light preface to Picard. That's what I've heard. Like I say, I'll maybe catch that one, but otherwise, Discovery's just lost me at this point. I just don't care. They came as close to me being enraged when I was doing those reviews as I ever get. And at this point, it's just like... my expectations are so low, they're next to dinosaur bones. Some of the Star Trek fan films were better written. Watched a bunch of them, and a lot of them are top notch. Yeah, right on the top of that list is Star Trek Continues, and I think right below it you have Star Trek... I've forgotten. It's not Star Trek Phase 2. But Phase 2 comes in pretty close after that. There's a Star Trek Horizon full-length movie, which they did on a shoestring, but still did an amazing job when you know what you can kind of see what they're doing sometimes, but still a very good story, very well put together and very well executed. So in terms of Star Trek Discovery, I think it left everything to be desired, and if they'd had any brains, they just would have said, screw it, and put Star Trek Continues on CBS and let it air for 12 weeks. J. Marshall, sorry, President says there's no disco in it for New Voyages. Yeah, New Voyages, that's another one. New Voyages, it's New Voyages Phase 2, depending on when they were and what they thought they could do. But yeah, it's got 2 different names. Star Trek, it was about another ship. Dang it, I'm not remembering. But there are a lot of good fan films out there. At one point, before I switched to doing political commentary, I had said that I was going to do a fan film like once a month, and I may go back to doing that. My problem is I do reviews for classic films that come from 1980 to 1900. It turns out that the OOs, 1910, 1900, 1910, 1920, 30, 40, 50, and up to 1980 were hell of a great years for science fiction. Particularly 1980 was a hell of a year for science fiction. So I have so many different classic ones lined up. I think I got 4 to 6 in February, and then there's a whole bunch of them that don't have specific release dates for me to do them on. So it's just like during first of the month, there's 7 or 8 movies. I'm gonna, if I can, as long as I can find copies of them, I'm gonna be doing reviews of those. There's a lot of them, so I'm not sure that this year I'll be able to work in fan films. I'd like to very much. Starship Farragut, that's the one I was thinking of, Jay Haley. Yeah, that was good. Like 20 years ago or more. Hidden Frontier is good. Again, it's one of those ones you have to forgive a little bit because the actors are fans, and they're not professionals like, Star Trek Continues. But I always give the acting a bit of a pass on fan films, because if you gave me the opportunity to play the captain of some starship in a fan film that was reasonably well made with good special effects, I'll take it. And I'm not the greatest actor in the world. I mean, I'd probably do a reasonably good performance, but I always give them a bit of a pass because they have, unlike me, they have no training whatsoever. You got to give them a little bit of a pass. Yep, Star Trek Phase 2. James Cawley did that one, yes. And actually, Vic Mignogna... No, that was Farragut. Vic Mignogna made his first appearance as Kirk in Star Trek Farragut. So... music was great. Music was great. It was interesting because you heard some electronic noises in places, electronic sounds in places, but then it was a lot of orchestral stuff. It wasn't anything that jumped out at me that it makes me say, this guy's a maestro. Because I always refer to certain more modern composers as maestro because they're doing the similar work or the same work as people like Beethoven, Bach, etc. did in their era. The difference is how they're getting paid. So I didn't see anything in there that made me go, he's elevated now in my mind. But the music was very good, as all good soundtracks do. It underscored the action well. It created tension when if you just heard it silent, there wouldn't have been. It created, people getting together and having a closeness where if you just watched it silently, it wouldn't. So it's a very, very good soundtrack from that perspective. Very, very happy with that. So. This one I didn't have to copy from anything, so then we get into special effects. It was an army. As with most modern science fiction, multiple houses and many multiple individuals were used, and it's impossible to give any specific credit to any specific individual. All you can say is it was all great. I really, really enjoyed the space scenes at the beginning. It is, now you've got CGI where you didn't have it back in Next Gen. And it was really nice when you have the budget to do really beautiful and interesting space shots. Like when they're out in space and the ships are moving around and all of the special effects are happening. And especially when you get to like the Borg cube and you have all these ships going around. And in the Enterprise at the very beginning when we're out in those nebula. All very, very, very beautiful special effects, and I liked those a lot. Very beautiful and worked very, very well for the show. I even liked the transporter effect. It's a very simple effect, and what they always do with the transporter as they've gone along is they have refined it to be both a more interesting effect and faster. And in this case, the transporter beam is like half a second. It's you're there. And that's a good thing. It tells us, okay, we've taken this science and we've moved forward with it. It is a logical progression of the science, and I really like to see that. But otherwise, great special effects, just great. Impressed me right from the first moment. Just, the blue skies being sung and seeing those, various nebula they're in, and then the Enterprise coming in and going into 10 forward. Yeah, it was great. I loved these special effects. They were just great. Done by people who have imagination. Really good stuff. So let's see what I copied with this card. Woohoo! I copied the right one. James Cawley is crazy in the right way. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what happened between he and Vic Mignogna to... I know what triggered it, but there was clearly a lot of drama going on in the background that caused the two of them to completely... I don't think they're on speaking terms to this day, and it's been many years. Wasn't it Bing Crosby singing Blue Skies? I don't know who was singing it. I didn't pay attention. I just noticed it as a fan service. It wasn't Data singing it, but it was a fan service for Data having sung it at Riker and Troy's wedding. So I thought was good. So costume design is by Christine Beaslin Clark. She has been active 1997 to present with 14 costume designer, thanks to her credit. She is doing all of Picard. She did Tron Legacy, and she did Marvel's Most Wanted, which was a short. She has 18 costume and wardrobe credits to her name. She was assistant costume designer, for example, on X-Men Origins, Wolverine, and Watchmen. She has won an award. She won the Costume Designer Guild Award. She didn't win the award. She was a nominee for Tron Legacy. Her costumes, the costumes here are fine. They're good. The costumes are great. I like the way that the new Starfleet uniforms work. They're much similar to the way you only see them in the background here. We're going to see more of it. But they were really much more similar to the Starfleet uniforms that we saw in the era of Voyager. And I liked those costumes. I thought those costumes were generally the ones that looked best on characters, the way that they were designed. And they were more functional costumes, I thought. These are costumes where, the women or anybody wouldn't necessarily have to change into another costume or take off a jacket or anything like that to get work done. This was just functional costumes, and they're much like that, and I thought that was good. Costumes of other characters. Costumes should always tell you something about the character. Just as, for example, I make the choice to wear this, that's part of my brand. It's something I'm pushing. It's supposed to tell you something about me. Kind of a folksy dude, who comes from a part of the country where most people don't do live streams or reviews from. But everyone makes some kind of decision about the costume, the clothes that they wear. Even if you're kind of poor and you go to like I do, you go to the Salvation Army. Well, I'm going to pick, T-shirts and jeans for the most part. That's what I wear, T-shirts and jeans. Other people might have different ways of choosing the costume, for their clothes. So the costume always tells something about the character. And the costumer then is responsible for making sure that those costumes are saying something about the character themselves. And that worked well here. The costumes were telling things about the character. Picard is dressed, when he goes out for his walk, and he's got a jacket and that particular kind of hat, and he's out with number one, there's something telling you about that character. And I think he did change his costume some, his clothes, some as he went through. And by the end, he's in something that's a little more where he's saying, I got my mojo back. It's all underscoring what the character is and how they feel. That's what all costumes should do. Jay Haley says they have them in Star Trek Online. They look a little more practical. Military uniforms are communications devices. They billboard telling you that the service members' relative place and position in the organization, and lots of other stuff. Yes. And generally, with the exception of movie era, original series movie era uniforms, the Starfleet uniforms have been fairly sparse. They have a color at the top telling you what their area is, and some pips across the side to tell you their rank. Fairly sparse, but also fairly functional. In terms of if you're an engineer or something, you don't the jagged uniforms they have and stuff would get in the way of doing engineering work. You'd have to change into something else, take off your jacket or whatever. When they've got that, you just pull up your sleeves and go in. So. Gene Roddenberry hated the World War II uniforms he had to wear. I don't know how he felt about the police uniforms. So he pushed back against that in Star Trek stuff. Even in the original series, it's pretty sparse. It's a particular color, got your badge, and the rank insignia on the sides. But that was similar to what they had in the Navy, so it sort of made some sense, especially since back then a lot of viewers had, served in World War II, so they had some expectations. But the uniforms were still fairly sparse. You didn't see all the stuff on them that you see on modern military uniforms. But again, costuming here, very, very good. Jay says, starships are big machines. You're in an industrial environment. That's also a life support system. Yes, crawling around. Geordi did it all the time. When he needed to go into a Jeffries tube, he changed into a different uniform. This uniform, you could just go into the Jeffries tube, And not unlike a submarine. Yeah, very much so. It's enclosed space where any mistake can kill you because space is like that. So, but I like the costumes throughout. I thought they told things about the characters, and it worked well. The makeup here, the makeup department head, there were a lot of people on makeup. Jay says, Doohan thought the original series movements were a little fey. Fey back then would have been kind of gay. He didn't like the way they bloused at the bottom. I always thought that was a cool thing. If I was going to do anything different about uniforms, I might do something like that. I thought it looked a little swashbuckling. James Doohan never liked it, but I always thought it a little bit more swashbuckling because of that. So James McKinnon is the makeup department head. There were a lot of people on makeup on this, not surprisingly. He was active 1991 to present. He has multiple makeup department credits. Geordi often went into the Jeffries tube in his normal costume. Yeah, he did some, but a lot of times people would be changing uniforms. There was another, sort of jumpsuit uniform that was looser that you sometimes saw the engineering people in. Particularly what appeared to be engineering non-commissioned officers, NCOs, or just plain crewmen. But he has a lot of makeup department credits. Now, this covers a lot of ground, and it's not just department head. So, for example, he's set to do all 10 episodes of Picard as the makeup department head. He has 16 SDDs, 1 short track. He did Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 2, Kong Skull Island, The Exorcist, Ant-Man, The Exorcist would be the crappy remake, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the crappy remake, Star Trek 2009, The Tick, the live-action one, of course, Star Trek, Starfleet Academy video game. He did House of Frankenstein. He had 2 sliders, 7 Buffy the Vampire Slayers. He did Star Trek First Contact and 19 episodes of Space Above and Beyond. He actually has 3 acting credits. He did a walk-on for STD, and he has some various other walk-ons. And he was directed for Crystal Force 2 Dark Angel. And he has a special effects and a producer credit. So he came to this with a lot of experience. Jay said they're all 20-year vets and all started after 1994 when TNG went off the air. Yes, they are. Yeah. That's how far removed we are. That is how old we are. And this is why my young Padawans who may watch this in 20 years, you too can be a Fandi master by having watched all of this. James has won multiple awards. He has won the Primetime Emmy in 2019 for Outstanding Prosthetic Makeup for a Series, Limited Series Movie or Special for STD. He won again in 2017 for Outstanding Prosthetic Makeup for a Series, Limited Series Movie or Special for American Horror Story. He won the Emmy in 2016 for Outstanding Makeup for a Limited Series or a Movie Non-Prosthetic for American Horror Story. He won in 2015 Outstanding Prosthetic Makeup for a Series, Limited Series Movie or a Special for American Horror Story. And he won the Emmy again in 2014 for Outstanding Makeup for a Series, Miniseries Movie or Special Prosthetic for Nick Tupp. So as we can see here, here's a man who has quite a lot of Emmys. He had quite a lot of experience coming into this. He also has won the Hollywood Makeup Artist Guild and Hairstylist Award in 2016 for Best Contemporary Makeup Feature-Length Motion Picture for Furious 7. In 2004, same award for Best Special Makeup Effects Television Series for Nip Tuck. 2002, same thing for Best Contemporary Makeup Television for a single episode of a regular series, sitcom, drama, or daytime for Providence. And he has 6 other nominations. So clearly, we're dealing with a guy who is both talented and has quite a lot of experience. Even though he has first started working, let me look back, he first started working in 1991. So he's actually been around a while. Doesn't look his age in this picture to me. But the makeup on this is fine. It's great. I mean, he does all the pointed ears. He does facial prosthetics. He does them a lot more subtly than we've generally seen. These are characters who, with their facial prosthetics, could move the top of their heads. They could do things like squint, do that, and the facial appliance will still work with it. Next Gen had a problem, not a problem, but they did the best they could for the time period. But the fact was, until you got to Star Trek VI, you could not get appliances that would fit down and allow the actor to actually use their forehead and stuff like that. You see it really clearly in the trial scene with Kirk and Colonel Worf, played by Michael Dorn, who played Worf in Star Trek The Next Generation, apparently that character's grandson. You can see it, because in Star Trek The Next Generation, he cannot move that forehead. It is the way it is. It's stuck there. It's never going to move. In Star Trek VI, the makeup had evolved to the point where they could get it. And there's a particular line when he says, "I beg the court to consider this when pronouncing sentence." He actually moves upward, his forehead moves upward, and he's able to do it. Similar here. The Romulan ridge that he's got is not this giant thing that we saw in Next Gen. It is much more subdued, it looks better, and it allows the actor to use their whole part of their face. And that's a really good thing. Let's see. Jay Haley says they're all 20-year-old vet and started in 1994 when TNG was off the air. And high-resolution cameras, too. Yeah, you have to deal with that. One of the things, if you watch, Star Trek The Next Generation in Blu-ray, if you get close-ups of, like, Worf, and it was late in the shooting day, you can see where, the lines are of the prosthetic. So, yeah, not only are they more subtle, but they're also made better so they can deal with this, incredible resolution that they have to have by comparison. My only thing about the makeup is the scruffy semi-beard. What the frack is up with male characters who cannot use a razor or clippers? This sort of weird semi-beard does not happen by accident. Now, if you look at my beard, right, I trim this sucker every few days in a specific way so that it looks good. I shave everything on my cheeks and everything on my neck, and I color it. I dye this thing because it's now coming in patchy brown and white, and it looks weird. So if you ever see a skunk beard like this one, like Senator Ted Cruz, he is dyeing it. This don't happen by accident. But look at this pic, right? You would never, he doesn't shave the cheeks, and he doesn't shave the necks, and everywhere else, Dan looks like stubble. It doesn't look like it's grown in. And not only that, but see, the stubble on the neck, when it grows in, I personally find it uncomfortable as hell. It's scratchy, and I don't like it. That's part of the reason I cut it. And with these kind of TV and films, the other thing that tends to come up when you see people with beards like this, these half-shaven ones, it's almost telegraphing to the audience, and I don't know if it's doing it this time, but typically it's telegraphing to the audience that this is a bad guy. I mean, you might as well put a handlebar mustache that he can twirl on it. I do not get why they're constantly doing this. I don't see that it looks good. If you're going to grow a beard, grow a beard. If you're not going to grow a beard, learn to use a razor. It's the styles like when they switched away from slick down look for male hair. I guess, it's just that I don't see this on the street. I see neck beards on the street, guys who have long beards that can go down on their necks and stuff. That I see. I do not see people who have set their clippers to -2 and are cutting it so close to make it look like they have it, like they're just starting to grow a beard and not. I mean, how do you do that? To me, it looks weird as all hell. And get off Bill's lawn. That's right. I'm sorry. I like the way I'm doing it and the way that people of my generation do it. I think this looks weird. And I don't even see people in real life with it like this. Not this constant stubble. They grow out a beard, or even the neck beard guys, as I say, they grow it out. So. Finally, we get past most of the crew, which I always do first. And we get into the acting. Okay, Marshall says, got to run. Catch the rest on demand. Yes, early tomorrow morning. Cool. Catch you later then, Marshall. Happy to have you in, as always. So we get to our acting. Sir Patrick Stewart as Picard. His credits. Why bother? If you're watching Picard, you know who he is. For that matter, if you've been watching movies, a lot of movies made in the last 30 years, you know who he is. If you've been watching a lot of stage productions in the last 30 years, even before, you know who he is. And if you want to see his credits, look him up on IMDb. It's pages long and doesn't include his stage work, which he's been doing as well. Yep, sleep well, Marshall. Exactly, Jay Haley. His awards, again, look him up on IMDb. It's several pages long. I cannot list them all. He is incredibly, prolific actor and is extraordinarily talented at everything he does that I've ever seen. And he's nominated or won something for just about everything. Dune, yes, Sir Patrick was in Dune. The Dune movie that doesn't. I don't know, it's a weird movie. The Dune movie with too much voiceover. That Dune movie. You really shouldn't have to voice over what a character is thinking all the time. He is, frankly, Sir Patrick is one of the great actors of our era. He was knighted for being such a good actor. The only thing that could happen to him that would be better than that is for him to be made a peer, that is, a lord, rather than just a knight. And that's not impossible. Laurence Olivier was first knighted, and then he was elevated to Baron Laurence Olivier of Brighton. And at this stage in their respective careers, believe it or not, Sir Patrick has more credits than Olivier did, both on the stage and the screen. I would not be at all surprised if at some point before his death, he isn't elevated to the peerage. He was also in Excalibur. Yes, he was. The number of things he's been in, he started out in the late 60s or mid 60s. He's been in everything in the universe, and he always does an extraordinary job. Again, I to some extent, I count how good an actor is based on whether they can deliver clunky dialogue, but internalize it so that it makes sense. And he could always do that. Sir Patrick is an amazing actor. And his performance here is great. He falls into the Picard role. By God, he must know this role. He played him for 7 years in several movies. He knows this guy. But at the same time, we're seeing a different version of him. He's kind of just, as he says, I've just been waiting to die. And, he hates waking up from his dreams. He's waiting to die. He's down and out and then gets his mojo back. And we see it at the end. He's just said, that's it. I'm going, I've got something I have to do. I got a mission. I'm going to go do it. That's our Picard. That's the guy we remember. He is, like Jay said, sort of like Kirk in Star Trek 2. Thinks he's useless and done for. And then something happens that triggers him to say, screw this, I'm getting up and going. We actually see it physically. He talks to his servants there, says, I'm going, and gets up. He's a total change in character, and it's very, very wonderful. Good guy. Yeah, other things he was in that most people don't know, Larry, Life Force. There's a ton of stuff he's been in. And as I say, at this point in his career, he has outdone Laurence Olivier. I think there's every chance that sometime before he dies, he will be elevated to the peerage. I think that's quite possible. He will be Baron of something. So, other performances, we got, I don't know for sure how her name is pronounced. It's either Isa or Isa Brion, or Briones. I don't know for sure. I looked for phonetic pronunciation, couldn't find it. Larry says, Jay Haley says he was in Life Force. Yeah, missed him. Yeah, I was too busy looking at the space vampire chick. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I remember about Life Force. I've seen the movie several times, but that's what I remember about Life Force. But yeah, he was in it briefly. I don't think he's a major character, but he's been in so many things, and so many things that people never see. The Shakespeare work that he's done on the stage, Shakespeare work he's done for the BBC, he's freaking awesome. Every time you see him, he's awesome. Wouldn't it be surprised if he went to the peerage? Wouldn't be surprised at all. Yeah, Jay Haley says Brion does fine. She's okay. She'll do. Yeah, her acting credits are 2008 to present, and she has 8 acting credits. One of those translates into Picard. So she's not won any awards. She is clearly the least experienced of this whole cast. She's okay. She's not the best of the cast by any means. I think, to be honest, playing scenes with Sir Patrick probably brings out the best in her. But you can't get over the fact that she is the most closer to a novice of this cast. One of the things that bothers me, and this is something that happens with modern actors a lot, they'll have a line that they think is important, that they need to punctuate. And what they'll do, instead of making the whole sentence and punctuating it somehow, they'll say things like, her line that I remember was, look at me. Except that she punctuated by, look at me. Younger actors do that a lot. And there's other ways that you can deliver that aren't just basically putting a period at the end of the words. That is something novice actors tend to do. Super Cruise 7063 says, didn't Sir Patrick do the Moby Dick movie? I don't remember for sure. Certainly possible. Dude's done everything. Look for him to be a baron someday. But again, I hate when they do that sort of thing. Younger actors do. There's better ways to deliver those lines than punctuating them just with pauses. One of the interesting things about her, however, is I have to wonder if she wasn't cast in part due to her resemblance to Hallie Todd, who played Lal in the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Offspring, which in that episode, Data built a daughter for himself in the form of Lal. Eventually, her emotion circuit caused her to have weird outbursts and her positronic brain failed and it killed her. However, Data did download her memories. And what became of her body is completely unknown. So maybe is the reason that this person was cast partly because she does have something of a resemblance, not a complete resemblance, but something of a resemblance. Maybe there's something involved there that has to do with Data's legacy that we're going to see later on. In any case, I think she's okay. She's not the best of the cast, but I think she does better performances when she's in the presence of a better actor. One of the things that I discovered when I was an actor, and not a very good one, is that being around better actors tends to make you give a better performance. Again, I was never a great actor. I was a good guy who did great dialects and accents really well, but that was about all. But when I was in the presence of someone who was a much better actor than I was, more of my own talent was brought out. It was partly because I felt like I needed to live up to the person you're with, and partly because when you get to interacting, if you're doing it real, the other person is being genuine with you, it becomes something where you become genuine back to them, and it tends to feed off of each other. She may well get better in terms of this as time goes on. We'll have to see. But I think when she's with Sir Patrick, it works best because, of course, he's the best freaking actor and one of the best actors of our time, period. And so when she's with him, I think he's making a better performance out of her because he's being so genuine with her that it's like I'm being genuine back with him. It gives her a lot to work with. A really talented actor gives a less talented actor a lot to work with. And so it tends to feed off of each other. Jay says, I like Data sharing the paintings. Yes. Remember Data's mom? Yes. I remembered Data's mom. Yeah. There's a lot here to choose from, and the fact that they've decided to go with synthetic life forms and things like Data, except that you're using apparently regular internal organs for them, that's an interesting way to go. It's an interesting way to go. I think we're going to have, I'm not going to tell you what I think, but there's some connections here that I think we're going to see. The only two other people I'm really going to go into, because they're the only ones who are really doing any interacting with the as characters with each other. We have Orla Brady as Laris, who is one of Picard's Romulan servants. Her credits go 1991 to present, 64 acting credits, 1 filming, 1 in post. She's going to be doing 2 Picard episodes. We're going to see her one more time. She did 4 American Horror Stories and 1 Doctor Who. The Time of the Doctor, she played a character. She's done 9 episodes of Sinbad. She has done numerous other TV, many of them British, and did a wide range of genres and multiple principal roles or recurring characters. She has been nominated for 7 awards. I think her performance is great. It looks like this is somebody just like her husband who Picard managed to save. Romulan Picard managed to save in all of this nonsense. And so she's clearly devoted. She clearly is devoted to making sure that Picard gets what he needs, what he wants. At the same time, she's not above being, a little bit cheeky with him. It's a good little relationship they have going. It's like these are people who've been around for years and they know what Picard's, various quirks are, and they can work with them or make fun of them. So it's real good. I like that. Then we have Jamie McShane as Jaban, who is the other servant that Picard has. His acting credits, again, getting back to, it's been 20 years. 1997 to present, he has 136 acting credits. 1 completed, 1 in post, and 1 shooting. He will be in 3 episodes of Picard. He was in a Star Trek Enterprise episode as a tactical crewman, basically a walk-on with no roles, I think. He has primarily done TV with a wide range of genres, numerous and multiple principal roles. He has won awards, the New York City International Film Festival Award in 2017 for Best Supporting Actor in a Feature Film for The Meanest Man in Texas. He won the Palm Springs International Short Fest Award in 2000 and honorable mention for the acting performance in Fine. Again, his performance is very good from the perspective of here's somebody who Picard has managed to save, from all of this nonsense. And he's very loyal to Picard, clearly. He's said to the skank reporter, we talked to her, they're not going to talk about your separation from Starfleet, which, of course, skank reporter does. But, he's trying to make things so that Picard looks good. He comes off well. He occasionally jokes about some of Picard's peculiarities. Again, real good. It's like you're seeing Picard with Alfred the Butler when he's done Sirius. Only has 2 different people, some kind of housekeeper butler thing going on. It works really well. I liked it very much. Too bad we're not going to see more of them, I think. Then we have Alison Pill, who is playing Dr. Agnes Giranti, who is our resident expert on synths. Picard wearing a tie. Yeah, that was one of the few times that I thought something was a little weird. We haven't seen anyone in Star Trek wear a tie except in Star Trek Enterprise as a dress uniform. But the choice of doing that made Picard look sort of like, a squire, a squire of an estate, which he kind of is. So as a choice to do that, again, I thought a good costuming thing, even though we don't really see ties. I thought it was a good costuming thing. And his, gosh, I have to look back. Jaban, working with it and making sure everything, setting his tie up and working it out. Again, it's kind of like this. It's like if you have Alfred the Butler around, only, he's really done well. So I like those 2 relationships. Kind of sad that we're not going to see more of them. Made him look more like a museum piece. Yeah, that's true. That is true. It made him look sort of a squire-like, but at the same time, not something everybody wore. So older, and again, he gets out of it real quickly. Not something he stays in for any length of time. So we have Alison Pill as Dr. Agnes Giranti. Again, 1997 to present with 74 acting credits. This is interesting because I looked through some of these. She is one of the few child actors who has transitioned into adult roles. She got an award as a child actor. I'll talk about in a second. Most child actors age out and they never work again. And this tends to leave them really psychologically screwed up. Because for some period of time when they're kids, they are surrounded. They are the absolute center of attention with everyone telling them how wonderful they are. They've got hangers-on who act like they're friends, but they're really only there to exploit them for their money. And then they age out and they don't work again. Everybody around them disappears. All the accolades stop. And they find that all these people that they thought were friends weren't friends at all. And in real life, they have no friends. So fortunately, she has moved into roles that are more adult and done it over a period of time. She has a long chain of credits that point to, as long as she continues doing this work, a continuingly bright future. Now, she has she has a series in post-production, another one, 8 episodes of something called Devs, which I don't know what is. She's doing 8 episodes of Picard. She has done 11 American Horror Story episodes. She has primarily done TV, but a wide range of genres and multiple recurring or principal roles in those TV series. So in terms of her performance, there wasn't a hell of a lot to see. We just see her kind of like, well, I don't think this can happen, and then wait, they come in 2s and all that. So Sarah, we're clearly going to see a lot more of her. We're going to see a lot more of her and see how her relationships with Picard and the other people she's going to pick up, like Elrond, That one I'm not sure what I'm going to think about. The apparently Vulcan with the long hair and the sword just looks like Elrond from Lord of the Rings. But we'll see how it goes. Jay said, people inside a career field treat that leaving that to career field like dying. You experienced that when you discovered you were sucked as an electrician. Yeah. When I left IT, I sort of felt that way. But by then, it had screwed me up so bad that I was like, God, am I glad to be under the pressure. So... Allison has one. Getting a new job is not dying. In some ways, it can be liberating. Yeah. I treat this show as my job, to be perfectly honest. I spend a lot of time on it. And as having a second job after IT, I'm enjoying it quite a lot. But Allison here has won the Burbank International Children's Film Festival Award in 2000 for the Best Child Actress Performance for the Dinosaur Hunter, and she has 11 other nominations. So again, she has done a good job of transitioning out of being a child actor and into more adult roles. And the fact that she could do that, awesome. Most child actors just age out. You never see them again. Where is the kid who played the son in The Munsters? You sometimes hear from him. Danny Bonaducci, perfect example of somebody who got really emotionally screwed up because of it. So, the kid from the Goonies who's a lawyer now. Yes. The fact that if you can be a child actor, Jay says, if a child actor can recover from the damage and find a better image of themselves, they might succeed strongly as the kid from Goonies did. Yeah, it's just a tough thing. I can only imagine, for years, having somebody around me, people around me, all kinds of them, telling me how great I am. People, like Miley Cyrus, right? People around her telling her how great she is, going on tours where she sings and everybody giving her accolades because she's on this TV show. Now, she seems to have gone into a fairly successful regular music career, but a lot of other child stars, the work dries up, poof, everybody's gone. Poof, all the accolades are gone, and you're left sitting here thinking like, man, I must really suck. I have no friends at all. So good for her. Good for her that she could transition into adult roles. Not everybody can do that. So at the end of any review, and I guess I've been at this 9, 10, coming up on 2 hours. Ron Howard did okay for himself, Super Cruise 63 says, as did Bill Mummy. Yes. Ron Howard did great for himself by moving out. He moved out of a child actor into more teenage adult roles, but even when he aged out of that, by then he was doing directing, and he's a brilliant director. So he did really great for himself in that respect. But exceptions that prove the rule. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many of them that you will never hear from again. You watch old TV shows and you go, oh, where are they from? Even new TV shows, relatively new ones, where did they go? So again, at the end of an episode, a review, we might ask ourselves, is it any good? Well, yes. Remembrance is definitely a good first episode. I am cautiously optimistic. It succeeds everywhere that Star Trek Discovery fails miserably. And while I suffer under the curse of the Fandi Master, and I can see a lot of things coming, those of you who are my young Padawans will probably definitely enjoy this. And even I enjoy it, which is saying something, because I've been watching a lot of Drek lately. I've been reviewing things lately that, it's one thing to suffer through 1958's Frankenstein 1970, one of the worst, probably the worst classic film I've ever reviewed on here. But it's a whole other thing to have to suffer through Batwoman. Watch my reviews on that. That is just a stupid show on every level. By the way, I want to say something about Batwoman that I didn't mention in my review, just real quick. Well, let me get past this and I'll talk about Batwoman. But I'm watching Batwoman, I'm watching Star Trek Discovery. Hate those both. But this is definitely better than all of those. It is a much smarter show. It is definitely something that you should watch. Even if you're not a Star Trek fan. I think, you miss the Easter eggs and little stuff like that. But I think it's approachable because we're really starting a new phase of Picard's life. All those other characters that were in his life are not the main characters we're seeing here. This is something else. Yes, J. Haley Alfalfa from the Alfalfa from Little Rascals. That was really he ended up dead. Drew Barrymore was screwed up, but got herself together. Is doing well and doing good. Yes, that's one of the things. I mean, she got hooked on various types of drugs after she got done as a child star, and again cleaned up and got to the point where she is looking good and doing more roles. So yay for her. But again, these are generally exceptions. But my little bit about Batwoman that I didn't mention in that review, and I should have, I went off on something that somebody said about why feminist characters don't get any real character development and being kind of evil. The point of that show, that particular episode that I didn't mention about, the antagonist has, throughout the episode, has participated in the attempted murder of what's said in the episode of about 450 people. She has extorted the entire city of Gotham City, something like 7 million people if it's Chicago. She has done credit card fraud by putting the police chief or mayor's, I've forgotten, credit card number for everybody to see. And she's let off with community service. And the reason is that they give through the episode is because she's gay. Okay, I'm sure that, my LBGTQ plus, I honestly don't remember it. People who are gay, people who, trans, whatever. I hope you're watching this and going, that's stupid, because it is stupid. This is a person who should be in jail for a long time, if for nothing else than the attempted murder of 450 people. And they let her off, and Batwoman does not try to apprehend her because she's gay and having a hard time with it. In the real world, guys, don't do this. It is going to put you in jail. Being gay is not your get-out-of-free card. So, unless anybody else has anything to say, that is probably all that I have to say about that. I would love to keep the conversation going, so please leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks, and I'll do my best to respond to you. So thanks for watching. That is all the time that we have today for this episode of the highly acclaimed, world-renowned Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.